Shabbat Shalom. So I want to begin actually this morning with kind of recapping what I said in my 2-minute Torah, because it's necessary to understand the rest of the Drasha. And while, I'd like to think that people read it, and I know that people do sometimes because I get questions about it, I don't imagine that everybody reads it or necessarily remembers it from, Wednesday until Saturday. Okay, so, I spoke in my introduction to the parasha how the word Tzav, it's an imperative, right? Command. And one of the things about this part of the Torah that we're reading is almost every paragraph begins Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, right? God said to Moses, saying, and then it says, Daber el bnei Yisrael va'amarta aleihem. Speak to the children of Israel, to the Israelites, and say to them, right? And so, sometimes, when we had the Gabbayim standing next to the Torah scroll, and I couldn't find my place, and a helpful Gabbai would say, V'yidaber Adonai Moshe lemor, right? He'd tell me what the next paragraph was, and every paragraph began that way, right? And then, therefore, it's a little unusual, because it does begin, V'yidaber Adonai Moshe lemor. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, but then it doesn't say Daber el bnei Yisrael, it says Tzav et Aharon ve'et banav. Tzav, command, not speak. Okay, so we get the idea that, right, commanding is stronger than merely speaking or telling, right? And so then Rashi says that the word, why do they use the word Tzav? And Rashi says that wherever the Torah uses the word Tzav rather than Daber, it's forceful, okay? God is urging them, not just telling them, but urging them. And also that the commandment takes effect immediately. It's not for future, because a lot of the commandments that are given in the Torah won't take effect until after we're in the land, right? Which is 40 years later. So here it means that it takes effect immediately, and it's eternal. It's not just for that. The people who are receiving it is for all time. And then Rashi comes in and quotes Rabbi Shimon, says that this Tzav, this sort of stronger imperative, is necessary when a commandment involves financial loss. Okay, and so here, the commandment is for the daily sacrifice, okay? And if you think about all of the daily sacrifices that would be made, throughout eternity, right? Not anticipating that the temple would be destroyed, but even for the 1,000 years or so that the temple existed, right? That's a lot of animals, right? So it's a lot of money to fulfill this commandment, and so people might be reluctant because people don't like to spend their money, right? I mean, it's true, people don't like to spend their money, right? I mean, County Executive has asked for a 6.6% increase in the property tax, okay? I'm not asking whether you're for or against. Who's happy about that proposal, right? I am looking forward to paying 6.6% more property tax next year.
You don't want me.
No, I blame, no. I know. I know. I know that, right? But people, right? I mean, even if you think it's necessary, doesn't mean you like to spend it, right? Now, it's true that there are other mitzvot that cost money, like lulav and etrog, right? Where we pay $40, $50 for a fancy lemon and a pine branch, right? But aren't $40, $50, it's not, several cows a day for eternity, right? And so that's kind of a limited expenditure. And what this commentary shows is that aside from the fact that people don't like to spend money on others, maybe they like to spend it on themselves, right? But Jews are not always enthusiastic about fulfilling the mitzvot. They're not. They may fulfill them, they may not fulfill them, but they're not necessarily enthusiastic, particularly when fulfilling the mitzvah is costly, right? And the halakha has often evolved to accommodate financial realities. For example, right? I keep reminding people, if you haven't already done it, to fill out the form either online or on paper to appoint me as your agent to sell your chametz. Right now, interestingly enough, that practice of selling chametz was instituted because the 1600s or so, a lot of Jews in Poland were distillers, okay? And they couldn't just dispose of all their chametz before Pesach, right? It was not intended for I got a loaf of bread, right? Or whatever, right? But nevertheless, I mean, none of us are distillers, right? None of us have or own a supermarket, right? But we still do it. And I think the reason is because times have changed. It's true. I mean, most of us have freezers, right? And for me, every year before Pesach, I put on my archaeologist hat and I got deep down into the freezer and I find, a packet of vegetables that expired in 2008 or, whatever. Well, but the point is that we have stuff that's chametz that we bought and didn't get around to eating it, and we don't want to just throw it away, and we can't donate it to the little free pantry. I mean, I was very happy on Thursday. I brought a trunk full of stuff over to the little free pantry, right? But they can't take frozen food, and they can't take an open, half-eaten 5-pound bag of Meal Mart chicken nuggets, right? So should I throw it away? No. So we sell it, right? And one of the changes in conservative Jewish practice that actually occurred since I've been the rabbi here is the ruling that says all Jews can eat kidney yolk, right? Now, whether you do or don't, I don't care. I will tell you that I do not permit us to use them in the shul during Pesach because I don't want people who still don't eat it to be uncomfortable, right? Because the speed limit can be 55. Doesn't mean you have to drive 55. You could, in theory, at least drive slow, right? I mean, people will get upset, right? But the point is, right, just because the law committee says you can eat kidney yolk doesn't mean you must eat kidney, right? But one of the motivations for the ruling that they cited was because kosher for Passover certified stuff, it's expensive. It is expensive, right? And you know, I mean, it's all kinds of stuff that, I mean, you can't live 8 days without pizza, right? Like, you gotta have, but whatever, I mean, it's expensive, and maybe if people could eat kidney out, they won't spend as much money on Pesach food, right? And here, another, I mean, when I was growing up, right, late Friday night services were the norm. Right now, of course, I grew up Reform, but the conservative shul down the block also had late Friday night services, okay? I don't know, and I honestly don't know whether Gaithersburg Hebrew congregation had late Friday night services when they did, okay? And, right, now, why did late Friday night services start? Why? Why? What? No, I'm not talking about like, okay, when Shabbat starts at 4:30, we have them at 4:30. When it starts at 6, we have them. I'm talking about 8 o'clock, 8:30. I mean, I look back. The Reform Friday night services were at 8:45. No, this is my place, okay? But 8 o'clock would be typical, okay? Whether Shabbat started at 4:30, whatever, okay? What? No, it has nothing to do with any of that. What? People were coming home from work. People were coming home from work, but also because people were going to work on Saturday morning, right? So that Friday night services were the big service, right? It was the big service. It wasn't like, like now, it's a quick, whatever. I mean, the big service was Friday night because people were going to work on Saturday morning, and it's true also that they were coming home late from work regardless of when Shabbat started, which would tell you start it later, but it wouldn't tell you to make that the main service of the week, right? And that's why I think Reform temples still tend to have the Friday night service late and the main service because they don't have Saturday morning, or they do, but people only come if they're invited to the bar mitzvah or, whatever, right? But Friday night services were a concession to the fact that people worked on Saturday morning, not out of choice, but out of feeling forced to do so, right? I mean, there were like 100 years ago or less, I mean, before there were employment protections, employers would put up a sign that says, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother to come in on Monday either, right? In other words, you had to work. And again, I'm also not talking about professions where, like, you're allowed to work, like if you're, a doctor in a hospital or something like that, where you really have to work because it's pikuach nefesh, it's saving a life, right? But people, I mean, either they were forced to work on Saturday because there were no employment protections, or else they own stores, right? They own stores, and they may have felt guilty about working on Shabbat, but they still worked on Shabbat, right? But the number of Jews who own stores now, right? And for the most part, I'm not saying everybody, because people still have professions which absolutely require them to work on Shabbat, whether it's like permitted like a medical professional, or whether, others, but for the most part, people who work on Shabbat now, it's because they choose to do so, not because they have to do so. And that, I think, is part of the reason why Shabbat morning became the main service rather than Friday night. Okay? But there are limits, okay? I mean, so we said eat kitniot. We didn't say eat chametz, right? I mean, if we could eat chametz, it's like we'd save a lot of money, right? But we didn't say that, right? I mean, we said, okay, have late Friday night services. We never said it's okay to work on Shabbat, right? We sort of looked the other way, but we never said that it's okay, because the law can be flexible, but it can't be, endlessly flexible, right? And it's, people for the most part observe or don't observe because it's a choice that they make, right? And another thing, I mean, every conservative rabbi has gotten this question at some point in their career, usually more than once, right? I went to the doctor says I have hypertension, I have high blood pressure, I can't eat kosher meat anymore because it's soaked and salted and therefore high in sodium, so I can eat regular meat now, right, Rabbi? No. Don't eat meat, right? First of all, by the way, if you soak the kosher meat a second time, most of the sodium, it's like not statistically significant anymore, but whatever, okay? Assume that it really is a danger to your health to eat kosher meat. Don't eat kosher meat, right? That's not permission to eat trace meat, right? And if you do, that's a choice that you made, and I'm not going to stand up here and tell you you're a terrible person, but I'm not. But I'm also not going to tell you that it's okay, because it's not. So don't ask me, okay? But it's a choice, and I'll end with this. Okay, so I had a woman who was studying with me for conversion, and she dropped out of the conversion course. Why? Because my Jewish fiance is afraid that if I convert, I won't let him play golf on Saturday morning anymore. Okay? So my fiance doesn't want to convert. I'm converting more or less because I'm marrying him. If he doesn't want me to convert, I'm not going to convert, right? And I absolutely, again, I'm not going to tell you that playing golf on Shabbat makes you a bad person, but I'm also not going to tell you that it's okay, right? I mean, people make the decisions that they make, and they do because, we live in a society that allows us to do that, that doesn't put social pressure on us to observe them. And it's one of the reasons why Orthodox communities are strong, because there's social pressure. There is social pressure. I mean, it is not necessarily the case that everybody observes everything that they observe because they believe in it, right? They observe it also because there's social pressure, right? If I'm seen violating Shabbat, they won't let their kids marry my kids. right? If I'm eating in a non-kosher restaurant, even if I'm having a vegetarian meal, people won't eat in my house anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So, and you know, again, good or bad, it exists, and it doesn't exist in our community. And so, you know, we feel that we have the freedom to decide what we do or don't do. And I mean, the fact that there's not so is good. I mean, I don't want to be part of a community where everybody is checking up on everybody else all the time, right? But the result is that, you know, less observance. Yeah.
Well, just a personal opinion and an observation. When I was working in the school system, not only as a teacher but also as a supervisor, I sometimes think that we Jews, irrespective of Orthodox, conservative, reform, modern, whatever you want to call it, are our own worst enemies. Point of fact, one of my closest friends was working in a high school, Shem Shabbos, and the principal was also a friend of mine, in fact, a sorority sister. Didn't come from the same geography, and Passover comes. And my friend, in the school system, you got an allowance of a certain number of days, whether they were sick or personal or whatever. So my friend does observe the entire period of Passover. Many Jews, believe it or not, don't even know that you have to observe anything after the first night or the second night. So when she would apply for leave, she would wind up using all of her sick leave for the entire Passover period. This time there was a change in administration when my Jewish friend had become principal and refused her leave. This is a Jewish woman coming from a Jewish home, right? And it was a big mess. It wound up having to be a political appeal.
Right.
So I really think that sometimes we are our own worst enemies.
Right. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story, then I'll wrap up. This is from a book called Tales Out of Shul by Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. Okay, Rabbi Feldman, a prominent Orthodox rabbi in Atlanta. Okay, and he, like, when he went to Atlanta in the 50s, like even the Orthodox synagogues had mixed seating and, you know, whatever, and he took the pulpit there after he was given permission. He's a graduate of Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, which is like a black hat. And the head of the yeshiva said, you can go there, you have 2 years to convince them to put in a mechitza. If you can't convince them, then you have to leave. And he did, and it's a massive shul. I mean, he's very old now. He's not the rabbi. His son is the rabbi there now. Okay, but he also established the first kosher catering kitchen in a hotel in Atlanta. Okay, and it wasn't. Now some hotels, like, they have a dedicated kosher kitchen, which only the mashgiach has a key to, and others, they have to kosher the kitchen each time they're doing a kosher affair. Okay, and he gets a phone call at his shul, and woman gets on the phone, I'm the new head of catering at the Renaissance Hotel, and your guys are here with blowtorches, and they tell me that they have to blowtorch the oven, and we can't have that here, so you tell them no. And Rabbi Feldman says, you're Jewish, right? She says, yes, I am. How do you know? Because I worked 15 years with your predecessor, right? And your predecessor never dared to tell me what I could or couldn't have my men do, because I decide what's kosher or what's not. So it goes along, right? So yes, absolutely.
Well, Rabbi, one more thing. In your Tiffany Torah that I read last time, you talk about the original tension of us never being communicators and sacrifices being vegetarian.